Well, hey there, Elmwood. I am going to we're going to do our own hour of code this year, if you'd like. And what I've done is created some very scientific things here. This is a Santa simulator. It's important to understand how Santa Claus works, and we do that through computer science. Here we have Santa sailing his sleigh through the air, and he needs to deliver presents to the chimneys. And as he flies over, we can drop presents. And
Oh dear.
and he needs to drop them in the chimney. If he doesn't get a point. And some sad children.
Ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Oh dear.
So this year for Hour of Code, we're going Hour of Code Holiday Edition, and I will teach you how to program this game in Scratch. Here we are in Scratch. To get to Scratch, you just go to your web browser and you can type scartch.mit.edu. And when you get there, this is what it looks like. You got a whole bunch of blocks here on the left. Here you can drop your blocks to create code. This is your stage. That's where your game happens. And down here you have your different sprites. Sprite 1 is this cat. I'm going to just throw the cat out. Oh, that's rude. I'm going to get rid of the cat. I don't need it. So I'm going to push this little garbage bin. And I need to create 3 sprites. I need to create a Santa Claus. I need to create a present. And I need to create a chimney. So let's do that now. I can create a new sprite by just pushing or hovering over the cat here. I can choose a sprite, but I'm going to paint my own by pushing the paintbrush. And then over here, I can paint. So I can make a sleigh with a square, etc. After I'm done making my Santa Claus, I'm going to make a second sprite, which will be the present. Again, I'll paint that, and I can just come in here and, use the square tool and, draw some ribbons on it or something. I'll use my paintbrush tool here and maybe pick another color. Make some ribbons. Be as creative or not creative as you'd like. There's a present, and then finally, for my third sprite, I'm going to make a chimney. So I'll go ahead and push paint for that, and be as creative or not creative as you like. If you're the sort who likes to be artistic, go for it. Here we go. This chimney could be as simple as that, if you'd like. Okay, so now I have drawn my 3 sprites. I've got my Santa Claus with his reindeer sprite here. I've got a present sprite, and I've got a chimney sprite. So what I'm going to do is we're going to say that our game starts when we push this flag. So we're going to set the initial state for each of our sprites. We'll start with our Santa sprite. Mine's called Sprite 1. And I'm going to go ahead and go under Events, and we'll say when the flag is pressed. Now, my Santa, when he's 100% size, is pretty big. He's too big for the game. So the very first thing we're going to do is change his size. So we'll start things off by changing the size of our Santa to 30%. So when our flag is pushed, the first thing that happens is Santa shrinks down a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is go under Motion, and we're going to set his initial position. So just like in math, our X and Y is left and right, and up and down is Y. And right in the middle is 0, 0. Just like in math. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my go to XY code box, and I'll drop it here. That's our next thing. And we'll say, let's set our X position to -287. Let's push the flag to see where that is. Okay, that's all off the screen. That's kind of what we want. We want them to start flying from one side to the other, and now we want to move them up near the top. So that's in the positive Y direction. So let's say 18. Let's say that and push our flag. Okay, he starts up here. That looks good. So what do we want Santa to do? We want him to fly across the screen. And when he gets to the other side, we want him to kind of magically come back over here, kind of like how Pac-Man goes off one side of the screen and comes back over. So we're going to go under our controls. We'll find a forever loop. And we'll say the following. So forever, as our code runs, we want to his X position to change by a little bit with each loop through our forever loop. So we'll say change our X position by, change X position by, and we'll change it by, I don't know, 2 pixels. These numbers here are pixels. So let's see what happens. Oh, there he goes. He's flying across. That looks good. I'm going to push stop. And when I push start again, you'll notice he goes back to the start because that's what we told him to do in the code. All right, the next thing we need to do is, you'll remember when I was playing the game, the presents fall out of the back of Santa's sleigh. So we need to keep track of the position of our Santa as he flies across the screen. So to do that, I'm going to set up a variable. And so I click here on variables, and I'm going to make a variable. And I'll just call it X position. And it can be for all sprites because we want our Santa sprites X position to go to the presents sprites X position. So I'll say OK. We'll go in our variable and we'll say every time through the loop we want to set our variable position, X position, to the actual X position of our sleigh, which is this right here. All right, the next thing we want to do, we want to check to see if Santa hits the side of the screen, we want to make sure that he comes back to the start. So we're going to need to check for that condition. Right now, Santa just keeps on flying, I think. Look at that. Well, I guess he eventually hits the side. But we'll go under controls, and we're going to create an if statement. So we'll say if Santa hits the side, we want him to go back to where he started. So we'll grab another one of these go to XY blocks, and we'll put the same numbers we have here. We want him to go back to the exact position he started in. So we had 287 and 118. But we need our condition here. So when he hits the side here, he's at 288. We can see that from our variable here. So we need to check. And to do that, we're going to use an operator. We're going to say, use this greater than operator. So we'll say if his X position is ever greater than the number, we won't say 288, we'll say 287. And then he'll go back to the start. So check it out. Let's stop, start, and here we go. He's going to fly. And whenever he hits that edge, he's going to go back to the start. Would you look at that? Santa is magic after all. All right, let's set the initial starting positions and code for our present and our chimney. We're going to get the chimney to move around all over the place, and we're going to get our present sprite to show up when we push the space bar. So let's go click on Sprite 2 here. I'm going to go under Looks and Show. And there we go. And I just want to show you the original size of my present. Again, it's pretty big. So we're going to set the initial conditions for Sprite 2, which is our present. So we'll go under Events. We'll say when the flag is pushed. We're going to do a few things. We're going to set our initial size to a size that is more manageable, a little smaller. So we'll say 30%. Let's see what it looks like. Looks good. If you want your present to be bigger or smaller, of course you can change that. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to hide it because we don't want it to appear until we push our space bar. So now check this out. Now it's disappeared. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to keep score. So whenever our present hits a chimney, we're going to count our score. So we need to make another variable here. We made an X position variable, which we're going to use in a second here. But we need another variable to keep track of our score. So I'm going to say make a variable. I'll call it score. We're going to score a point every time our present hits the chimney. So I'll say OK. You can see there it is. It's kind of blocking our view of Santa. So I could move the score down here if I want to. Then it won't get in the way. But when we start our whole game, we want to set the score to 0. So set score to 0. So that's our initial condition for our present. All right. Whenever we want to drop a present, we're going to push the space bar. So I'm going to go under Events and find when the space bar is pressed. And what we're going to do is, well, we're going to make it appear and fall But we're going to do that in an interesting way because we might want more than one present. And there's a special tool in Scratch that lets you create a copy of something. And it's called create a clone of myself. So all we're going to do whenever we push the spacebar is create a clone. And so let's specify what happens whenever a clone of our present is created. So when I start as a clone, we're going to do a bunch of stuff. The first thing we want to do is we want to move our present to the top. Well, let's have it show first of all. So we'll go to looks and we'll say show. So here we go. Let's just test this out. I'll push my flag, and whenever I push the space bar, boom, we got a present appearing on the screen. That's great. But what else do we want it to do? Well, we want to change its position so that it appears right behind the sleigh and falls from the back of the sleigh. So let's go under motion here, and we'll say go to XY. So we'll change the X and Y position of our present to the X position, which is going to be our variable. We're keeping track of the X position of our sleigh here. Let's drop that in there. So now when I push spacebar, you'll notice a present appears as if it's coming from Santa. So now I can dot the screen with presents. Okay, which isn't exactly how our game should work, but you get the idea. So what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to start falling. So we're going to have to set up a bit of a loop to run, and we'll do that now. So let's go to controls, and we'll say we want to repeat until it runs into our chimney. Right now our chimney is not showing, so I'll go ahead and turn on my chimney. So I'll go here, it's turned off. It'll be turned on for you already, but I'm going to say show. Oh, sorry, it's under look. So I'm going to show, and I'll put it back to its original size. So here's our chimney. All right. I'm going to click back, double click back on my present, go back into the code here. So we're going to say, I want to repeat until it hits the chimney. So I'll grab a repeat until block, and I want it to sense that it's touching the chimney. So I'm going to go under sensing, and I'll say is touching. We can say is touching the mouse, is touching a color, but we just want to grab is touching mouse pointer, and we're going to change it from mouse pointer to is touching sprite 3, which is our chimney. So it's going to keep doing everything inside this block until it hits the chimney. So what do we want it to do? We want it to fall. So we're going to go under motion, and we want to change our Y by a certain number. I'm going to say -4. You can change this number to whatever you want. Let's say -5. That's how many pixels down our present will move. So check this out. I'm going to go ahead and push start, and now we should have a present that falls. Look at that. And it'll stop falling when it hits that chimney. Pretty cool. All right. Well, what do we want it to do after it hits the chimney? Well, we want to count a point, and then we want to get rid of the present so it disappears off the screen. So I'm going to go under control, and I'll say, or sorry, variables, and let's count up a point. So we'll change a variable by 1. That means increasing it by 1. Let's increase our score by 1. So let's try this again. So he flies over the chimney, and when I push my space bar, it falls, and look at that. My score went up by 1. But we also don't need the present to appear anymore. We want it to kind of look like it went down the chimney. So I'll go under control, and at this point, we can delete the clone. So check this out. He flies over, and now when it hits the chimney, it's like it goes down the chimney to the happy children waiting inside. The other thing we want, though, is if the present doesn't hit the chimney, we still want to delete it because we don't want to just hang it out here at the bottom of the screen. So we have to create a little check inside our loop to say, hey, if it falls too low, let's also just delete the clone. We don't need it anymore. So I'll grab an if-then block, and I'm going to put it right below the change Y by 5. And we want to check the Y position, that's the up and down, of our present to say, if it's gone too low, let's just delete the clone. So I'm going to go ahead under operators, and I'm going to get a is greater or is less than block, and I'll throw that here. And we want to look at motion and see, is my Y position of my present less than, let's say, negative 180. That's about the bottom of the screen. And if it is, well, we don't need our clone anymore. So we'll go into control blocks and delete the clone. So let's see if it works. I'll stop. I'll start. And let's drop our present and see if it disappears. Yep. And it disappears there too. So this is working great. It counts a point when it goes in the chimney. And if it hits the ground, it still deletes, but it doesn't count up our score. So that's the code for dropping presents. Finally, we want our chimney to move around. Every time a present is delivered, we want to move that chimney to a different position and sort of make our game more challenging. So let's double click here on Sprite 3. That's our chimney. And we'll start with some initial positions. So I'm going to say events. So when our flag is pushed, that's the start of our game. Let's set a different size for our chimney. So let's set our size to, I'm going to say 70%, but like you can set that number to whatever makes sense for you. Let's give it an initial position along the bottom of the screen. So that's in motion. I'm going to say go to XY. And for me, I'll say, let's say 288 and minus 50. Let's see if that's a good position. I can check just by pushing the flag. Okay, it's over there. Sticking on the side. That's okay for now. We're going to have it move to a different position every time the game starts. Whenever, I'll show you here in a second. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to looks. We're going to hide the chimney. And you might be saying, why? But you'll see in a second. Hide our chimney. And the last thing we're going to do, because we want this chimney to appear in different spots, just like last time, we're going to create a clone of it. So every time the chimney gets a present, it'll reappear in a new spot. So let's say, well, what happens when we create a clone? Well, we're going to move it to a random, we're going to always keep it at the bottom, but we're going to move it to a random X position in the bottom so that it moves around. So I'll go up all the way to motion, and we'll say go to XY. We're going to say under X position 288, and sorry, I'm wrong. We're going to use a random block here, but we're going to keep that minus 55 at the bottom. So we like that Y position down there. You might not. You can change that number to match yours, but we can get random numbers for our X position. So we just go under operators here, and we'll say pick a random number. And we could say, let's see what happens when we say 1 to 10. So push the flag. Oh, we got to show our block too. So I'm going to go under looks and say show. So we moved the chimney there, but we didn't make it appear. So let's see what happens when we make it appear. So every time I push the flag, you can see it's moving a little bit, but it's not moving very much. So I need to adjust these numbers. So why don't I start by saying minus, I'll say minus 170 to 10, and let's see what happens then. So, okay, so it's looking good, but we need it on this side of the x-axis as well. So let's say all the way to a positive 170. And let's see, where do our chimneys appear? In lots of good positions, always along the bottom. That looks great. And you can adjust these numbers to make it work in whatever way is best for your game. All right, so what do we want to happen when a present hits it? Right now, when we drop a present, the present goes, and look at that, it gets delivered, but our chimney doesn't move. We want it to move. So we're going to do this. We're going to grab a control block, and we're going to say, okay, after you show, you're going to wait until something happens. We want to wait until it's touching the present. So I'll say wait until touching, instead of mouse pointer, I'm going to choose Sprite 2. Sprite 2 is our present. And what do we want to happen then? Well, the first thing we're going to do is create a new clone, which will trigger this to begin again. And we're going to delete the current clone so that it disappears. So let's check it out, see if it works. Let's drop a present and miss. Nothing happens. Drop a present and hit it. Boom, it moves. Just like that. And our score goes up. So these are the basics of the Santa game. So here's the challenge. What can you do to make your Santa game even cooler? Maybe you could make it so you could steer Santa around. Maybe you could make it so the presents fall faster the higher your score goes to make it more and more challenging. It's up to you. Maybe you can only miss a few times with a present. And just for fun, we're also going to throw in some sounds here. So I can record a sound by clicking up here on sounds. And right now there's a pop sound. But you can record a new sound if you want by pushing here, recording it. You could have Santa saying ho 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 when he drops his presents off, or maybe he's sad when they miss. But that's up to you. So a challenge for you is to make your Santa game as amazing as you possibly can. And that is the end of our ultra-scientific, computer sciencey Santa simulator. Remember, wherever you are in the world and whatever you celebrate, I hope you have an amazing holiday season.